Get down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
Get down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
Get down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
Who's down with D&D?
This whole party.
Get down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
Get down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
I'm down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
Who's down with D&D?
This whole party.
Welcome to Down with D&D. I'm Shawn Merwin, and today our co-host is none other than LaTia Bryant, Community Manager for the D&D Adventurers League,
Hello.
Rivals of Waterdeep streamer, an amazing ambassador for the game.
Thank
LaTia, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I've been working my way through the Adventurers League admins, and you are one of the most recent ones.
Yeah.
And so it was about time. But I like to ask all my co-hosts a certain question, which is, what's your history with D&D? When did you start, and why do you keep playing?
Well, D&D first entered my life at the end of high school, so little almost 15 years ago.
Okay.
We used to, before I ever played D&D, we used 3.5 character building to kind of inform characters and stories that we were writing.
Nice.
So I built a whole lot of characters that way, but I didn't actually get to play until probably a couple years later when my best friend's brother ran a little one-shot for us.
Mm-hmm.
That has kind of gone down in the annals of my D&D history because I played a human who was very bad at everything. And got herself into a lot of trouble before she realized that she had torches and could use those to see as opposed to fumbling around.
Walking through the dark. Well, it sounds like the DM may have led you down a dark path there, if you don't mind the pun. That might have been able to say, by the way, you have torches. But
yeah, but we were all having fun, and
that's good.
The realization at the end was probably a very good payoff for everybody else.
True.
I was a little mad, but it was more at myself than anything.
So you were the cautionary tale there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm interested in using D&D to create the characters that you would use in stories. So was this like for a class, or was this just something you did for fun?
No, it was
the storytelling.
Yeah, no, it was something that we all did for fun. I wrote a lot in high school. And when my friends introduced D&D to me, we all had, as many teens will do, we'll all have characters that are based on ourselves and things like that. So we used the stats to kind of inform kind of what we wanted ourselves to be.
Gotcha, yeah.
So yeah, my for example, like my character at the time was, be quiet, phone. My character at the time was like some kind of rogue. I don't remember too much about the 3.5 stats, but some kind of rogue who could also do magic and could fly and was really cool.
Yeah. No, it's funny because I've been toying with this idea of using D&D as a tool for teaching non-D&D players, narrative storytelling, writing skills. So I'm always interested in hearing that, how people come either to D&D from creative writing or vice versa, right? Being a creative writer and then going into D&D as part of that process. So I love to hear about that.
After that, I kind of fell out of it for a little bit until 4th edition, where I joined a 4th edition campaign that was going on. This was right about at the end of 4th edition.
Right.
Because once we were finished, we transitioned over to 5th edition with Horde of the Dragon Queen, but that group kind of fell out when I moved away. And then probably, it was about a year later, I, as many people do, came across Critical Role and saw that they were playing D&D, and I was like, it's been a while since I've played D&D. I need to find D&D again. And one of my local game stores was doing D&D nights. So I joined there and have been playing ever since, pretty much.
So when you watched Critical Role, was that how you played when you were playing, or was that something completely different? Was it similar?
It was completely different. Like,
Okay.
absolutely completely different. Like, I wasn't even watching them for D&D,
Right.
because what I saw of them first was, like, I saw like a gift set or whatever on the internet, and the emotions that I saw in them as they were, whatever part of the story was being represented in these pictures, was enough for me to say, okay, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and they're playing D&D? Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I started a 5th edition campaign, and then I think a year after that campaign ended, I saw a post on Facebook that was looking for some people to play D&D at a comic book store.
Mm-hmm.
And that was how I found Adventurers League.
Uh-huh.
That was my exposure to Adventurers League. And that I've been doing, like, Adventurers League is like my life now.
Yeah.
As you can see.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that's a heartening story for me, from someone who has been an advocate for organized play for so long. People will often say, well, I saw someone play D&D, and so I went to an Adventures League game and it was terrible and I never played again, or it took me 10 years to recover from that. And hearing you say that, you had experience with D&D, then you saw Critical Role, liked what you saw, went to Adventures League, and still liked it, is a heartening thing for me.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely different because, I'd never, like, as obsessively tracked things like that in Adventures League. We track what modules we play. At the time, we were still tracking experience, and who got to keep the item at the end of the module. Like, all that was fascinating to me. So it definitely didn't drive me away.
Yeah. What was the experience like in terms of what was going on around you? Was it like one table, or was it several tables all playing the same thing, or all playing different things?
It was one table. The comic book store was very small.
Okay.
And it was a bunch of people that I didn't know. I actually know, I ended up bringing a friend with me. So I actually introduced a friend to D&D this way. So
Nice.
Through Adventurers League. But yeah, it was just one table. The comic book store had, like, fantasy music going in the background. And
That's nice.
we started with season 1. So the content that everybody's getting right now, with the remote stuff. We started with that. And I had a blast. It was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. So that usually relies or tells me that there was a good DM involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a really good DM. My good friend Jake, my first Adventures League DM, and he still DMs occasionally, as far as I know. I haven't spoken to him in a while.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's been a few years.
Well, I mean, no. It's more recently that we just haven't spoken. It's the quarantine and all that stuff.
Oh, right.
But yeah, he was great.
And so what kept you playing then? What kept bringing you back to the table?
A couple of things. A desire to finish out the season's modules, because season 1 is a whole. I mean, they're all a whole story, but the season 1 story is probably one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
The desire to kind of see where my character was going. My first Adventures League character was a shadow monk.
Okay.
So I'd never played a monk before.
Mm-hmm.
So seeing where that progression was going to be very interesting for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the people, because the people that I met at that table, I'm still friends with today. Like, I met them playing D&D, and we've done a whole lot. Like, one of them comes with me to when we do convention DMing together.
Mm-hmm.
I play D&D with all of them. So it's the people at the table kind of kept me coming back as well.
Yeah. I mean, some of my best friends now are friends that I made through organized play.
Mm-hmm.
This was 3rd edition, and this was Living Greyhawk rather than Adventurers League, but it's kind of the same story. It's you go, you meet these people, you mesh with them, and suddenly you find yourself traveling to a convention 4 hours away, all of you DMing and all of you sharing stories, at the hotel room afterward or
Yeah.
on the trip home, and just some of the greatest stories and the greatest friendships spring from D&D in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can definitely attest to my convention circuit, as we all call it, whatever conventions we decide to go to, being excited not just to experience the stories that the writers have created, but also to see those people who we may not have seen since the last Gamehole Con or since the last Gary Con or whatever. Just to see those people. Let me take one brief second so that I can shut my window. There's a very noisy bird outside.
Hey, you got to take your nature where you can get it.
Hold on one second.
No worries.
I appreciate you, Mr. Bird, but you're really loud.
Yeah. Well, my cat is headbutting me right now, so I feel you.
And then you're not hearing anything else on my end, are you? Oh, hi, Katie.
No, not my. Everything sounds good.
Okay, perfect. Because I have my door open a little bit because my grandmother might need me or whatever. She's I look after my grandma.
Yeah. No worries. We can stop and start as we need.
All right, I'm ready now.
Okay, so the first convention that you went to then, so you got introduced through a game store, which is a way that a lot of people are introduced, and then what took you to a convention for the first time?
So the first convention that I played at, let's kind of break this up into player versus DM.
Sounds good.
We do a very small convention here in Chicagoland called LionCon.
Okay.
Lyons Township High School puts it on in their corral. So that was my first time doing an epic.
Okay.
Where, everybody gets together and the tables all participate, but I'd never played D&D with that many people before.
Uh-huh. And
that was very interesting to me, to kind of see how all of that came together.
Yeah. My
first convention as a GM, as a dungeon master, was Gen Con 51.
Okay.
I was debating on going, and it kind of cemented it when there was a group who was offering badges for running games, and I was like, okay, I can run some games. Mm-hmm. Oh, because Adventures League was also my first foray into DMing in general.
Right. Okay.
So I went to Gen Con 51, ran a couple of games, and I was like, that wasn't bad. Mm-hmm. Where else can I do this? And then Gamehole Con.
Okay.
Gamehole Con 2 years or so, Gamehole Con 2018.
Okay, yep.
Was my first full-on, I am pretty much only here to run games convention.
Yeah.
And that bug bit me hard.
Oh yeah, those experiences are either kill or cure, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just you're there and you're immersed in it, and it's exhausting, but it's exhilarating at the same time. And you get, you collapse in your hotel room at the end of the day, and you're either I'm never going to do this again, or it's like when can we do this again?
Yeah. And for me, it was when can we do this again, which mm-hmm. happened to be Gary Con 2019.
So not too long.
Right. And from there, I look forward to it so much, just to get back behind the screen and to have people look forward to, sitting at my table and giving me the privilege of running them through these adventures and stuff like that. It's such a joy.
Yeah. So when did you make that jump from player to DM?
Probably about 6 months into my Adventurers League journey. So probably like winter of 2017. I actually looked all this stuff up before we got together today. So yeah, it'd be winter of 2017 or so. I ran Lost Mine of Fandelver
Okay.
for our AL group on Monday nights, and um, yeah, it was terrifying,
Mhm.
absolutely terrifying.
So was this a group of experienced players or new players or
A bit of both,
okay.
experienced players and new players. But our AL table at the time was only one table when for the most part. So we'd have like kind of a couple of people who would rotate in and out, and a couple of people who were always there.
Gotcha.
So what made it easier for me was having those experienced players at the table who had kind of
Yeah. That's close.
facilitated my Adventures League journey, and were kind of like, you're fine, you've got this. We're
Yeah.
gonna play characters that are gonna mess with you so hard, but you're gonna have fun.
Yeah, and that's that's so important. As I'll have new DMs or people that want to DM say, what do I need to know? What should I do? And one of the most important things is having players that are supportive, especially
Mm-hmm.
those experienced players,
Mm-hmm.
because they can, if it's a good experienced player, they know how to help the DM along.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's a experienced player who is just there to destroy,
Yeah.
they can just take the thrill out of it, and it becomes a surviving them rather than creating with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think a good experienced player at the table will make a DM feel like they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But they'll be the one that herds everybody else on that side of the table, while the DM is like, oh my god, what am I doing? And it's
Yeah.
not that bad.
Yeah. We always hear 10 tips for being a good DM, or how to be a DM. We rarely hear 10 tips for being a good player.
Yeah, it's true.
And I feel like we need more of those. So your journey, as it were, through D&D and then into the Adventurers League has led you to becoming a community manager for the Adventurers League.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get into our main topic today. I wanted you to come on and talk about community, D&D community, because at this point, that is something that's very important to a lot of people who maybe previously were meeting in person, and that might have been some of their main social contact for a day or for a week, and now with social distancing going on, it's even more important that we have these outlets and can communicate with each other, not just to play games but to check in on everyone's well-being.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to ask you, you've done an incredible job in helping build community through D&D. You wouldn't be a community manager unless you had that skill and that talent and that experience. So I just wanted you to talk about that a bit.
Well, for me, it's a lot of it is maintaining, especially in this time where a lot of us can't get together. A lot of it is finding ways to maintain that community and being able to continue to develop it with the tools that we have. So a lot of us are all over social media. So having those groups where you are able to say, hey, if you like, take for example, I work at a board game store when I'm not community managing. So we have a D&D Facebook group for our game store that we, when we could all get out and do things, weekly posts about, hey, these are the AL games we've got going on. We're doing a couple of one shots, in a couple of weeks, and making sure that we check in with those players during this time is what is more important than anything else. So we've just started doing our AL games over Zoom. So we've got the AL going again. We've got, Zoom has been a big help getting, making sure that people can still play together. But I think just kind of making sure that those communities are maintained and letting people know that just because we can't get out and see each other face to face doesn't mean that we're not still here for each other.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. No, that's so very true. You can make a family out of your gaming group, basically.
Absolutely.
And that family's so important. So if people are new to D&D, or maybe they know D&D, but they are looking for a community or for a game, how can Adventurers League help them find that?
Adventurers League, I love because it's portable.
Mm-hmm.
You build a character and you can take that character to any other Adventurers League table across the country. If you're going out of town and you need to hop in, you've got that itch and you don't have your normal party with you, you can hop into a game at a game store if they've got one going on.
Mm-hmm.
I'd start with just checking out the website, dndadventurersleague.org. We've got a lot of articles and links to help you get started, to get you the right, what is the word that I'm looking for? The paperwork. The
rules.
Yes, the rules and the guidelines, et cetera, et cetera. And then finding a store to, or not even a store. Let's kind of put this in the perspective of where we are now. Finding a group online, a Discord or a forum where people are gathering up and, organizing games to play.
Mm-hmm.
As I mentioned before, like my friendly local game store has an Adventurers League group and we have moved online. So even if you're, if you usually play at your game store, call them, see, hey, could I volunteer to run some games online? But that's for people who are familiar with it.
True. So has there been an effort through the Adventurers League and through Wizards to facilitate this sort of online play?
Absolutely. Wizards of the Coast and D&D have been putting out so much free content for people to play at home or over Zoom. For example, the first season that I mentioned, the first Adventurers League season, they've been putting that out as free content over the last couple of weeks. Modules like Lost Mine of Phandelver, I think Dragons of Icespire Peak just went free on D&D Beyond, I think. I'm not sure if it's free through Wizards, but there is a lot that is being done to facilitate playing while we cannot get out to the table.
And so there's you can still play online and get credit for your Adventurers League character. There's no extra hurdles you have to jump through.
Nope. It's
cool.
If you knew how to track your sheet and your character and your adventures at the table, you do it the same way as you do online.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And so where can people go other than adventuresleague.org? Where are some locations that they might find a game, say?
So there's Roll20, there's Fantasy Grounds, I think Astral Virtual Tabletop. That's a new one through One Bookshelf, through the Drive-Thru RPG, I believe.
Yep.
Discord, the forums like D&D Beyond forums, or Twitter even, if you hashtag D&D, hey, does anybody want to play a game? I bet you'll have at least 20 or 30 people who are like, yes, please, let's play a game.
And if people have questions about this, what's the best way to get in touch with Adventurers League folks?
The best way is to you can email us at community@dndadventuresleague.org if you have any questions. We have our Facebook groups for both players, general Adventurers League public, and DMs. We're active on Twitter. You can ask me directly. I'm always willing to help out.
Okay. The if someone, say someone's a DM,
Mhm.
and they've DM'd before for home groups, for their friends, whatever, and they're wanting to go to that next level, and start DMing for strangers, start DMing Adventurers League stuff. What advice can you give them first in terms of what they can expect? What are the differences between just running a home game, whether it's published or not, and running for the Adventurers League?
The Adventurers League is more not is a little more restricted in terms of what is allowed at the table and what isn't, and that's to keep everybody on an even playing level. It's not meant to be malicious or anything.
Right.
You can go into it expecting. In my personal opinion, it's not too much different from a home game.
Okay.
You're bound by those restrictions of what you can create in terms of character and class, but
Right.
it's a little more constraints that some of the modules are written in. Adventurers League can seem a little railroady if you're trying to achieve a goal in a certain amount of time. The DM will want to push that that objective a little faster. But it's never been anything that I've minded.
Right. People sometimes say railroad like it's a bad thing.
Yeah, it's not.
Because it's not. It's getting a story told, and the players still have agency. It's just there's a scope in which the adventure is supposed to run, right?
Right.
And so you have to be a little more cognizant of, especially if you're running, as you said, in a timed fashion, that you want to get to the end of the adventure. So if the character wants to sit and talk with the bartender at the beginning of the adventure for 4 hours, then you have to know you're not going to get done.
Right.
Assuming that you have to finish in 4 hours. If you have 12 hours to play, you can do anything you want for that 12 hours as long as you finish the content of the 4-hour adventure.
It's exactly true.
Yeah. And in terms of like paperwork and stuff, how much is there of that in Adventurers League that a DM has to worry about?
Not a lot. There's the module that is presented to you that may be, if it's a 2-hour mod, maybe 30 pages. If it's a 4-hour mod, maybe 50 or 60, depending on how much is in it. Everything is presented to you within that module, so unless it says so, you won't need to go to your monster manual for anything because the monsters are in the back of the module. You won't. It helps to have the player's handbook on hand for any player questions. I always say you should have your player's handbook on you. The DM's guide for any like magic item related questions, but most things are given to you in the module that you're running.
Okay.
So there isn't a lot of extra that you need.
I'm going to switch gears on you now, just a hair.
Okay.
I'm hoping that we get out of this lockdown, social distancing at some point. I think we all know that it's going to go on longer than people want it to.
Yeah.
But at some point, hopefully, in a couple of years, we'll get back into the swing of things.
Yeah.
And be able to play in public and meet people face to face again. you have extensive experience in running in different locations, right? Running programs in different locations. You've run
Yes.
at libraries and schools. And I heard you talk on Dragon Talk maybe a year ago almost now about different things that you've done. If someone wanted to go to that level, they wanted to start building their own little communities,
Mhm.
what tips would you have for them to do that?
Keep an open mind, first of all. These days, it's not ridiculously, but it is easier than it used to be to get a D&D group started. Like if you walked into your local library and said, "Hey, I'd like to start running D&D on Wednesday nights," they'd probably say, "Yes, please."
Hmm.
We have a waiting list.
Right.
um, but I think definitely go into it with a plan. Don't say, it'll work a lot better for you if you say, I would like to start running D&D at this board game store, library, et cetera, on Wednesday nights for 3 hours, as
Hmm.
opposed to, "Hey, are you guys looking for anybody to run D&D?" Because
Okay.
while that answer is probably yes, it um it doesn't necessarily, I won't say it doesn't quite instill confidence.
Right. It always helps to go in with a plan, because the plan can always change, but as long as you have the plan, people are reassured that you know what you're doing.
Hmm.
Is that what you're?
Exactly.
Okay,
Yes. Yes. It's
cool.
like, if you say, "Hey, I want to run D&D on Wednesday nights," and the place you're going to says, "Oh no, we're doing something else Wednesday night, but what is your availability?" Knowing what, you know, knowing your backup plan
Hmm.
is also a good thing there.
Right.
Um, Also, go into it with an expectation, not just for yourself, but for your prospective players. I live near an airport. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. You're
Um,
allowed. You're allowed to live near an airport. It's okay.
go into it with expectations for your prospective players. Say, I'd like to run a table of kids ages, 9 to 13, or I'd like to run for adults, or, I'd like to run for the high schoolers. Um, Also knowing what the demand is. If you're in a town that has a lot of, surrounding middle schools and high schools, know that you're probably going to be running for kids
Hmm. Yeah.
because, after school programs and things like that, they're going to want the kids involved in things like that. So go into it knowing what you want to do, knowing who you're pitching to,
Hmm.
and be prepared to shake things up a little bit
Hmm.
from what you are expecting to do.
Yeah. And I imagine, like, going into a game store, you're going to have one set of pitches, as opposed to going into a school or going to a library. Um,
Mm-hmm.
each of those is going to focus on a different thing. With the game store, it's like, and people are going to buy dice, and
Mm-hmm.
and with the library, it's, hey, D&D helps you, your reading and your math skills.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, go, like, for the game store, and you also have to consider compensation. You may be compensated, you may not be compensated.
Right.
If you're running at a game store, you may be compensated in store credit.
Hmm.
The library, if they deem it, educational enough, they may provide a small stipend. And that's just kind of me going off of what I think. I don't actually know. But,
Hmm.
if you turn it into a program for that school or that library or that game store, um, you know, you may receive compensation, or you might expect compensation, and, be prepared to have expectations and
Hmm.
things in that area, and be prepared to not always be happy with what you get.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And a lot of that does go along with the planning, right? If you know that this school has grants for after school programs, then you could do some research in that and see what sort of things you need to walk in with in your plan. Doesn't necessarily have to be like a full lesson plan that the teacher would use, but
Right.
just some things that if you know they have a grant that is for certain age groups and you want to pitch toward that age group.
Right.
Those sorts of things. Sure. Awesome. Hey, is there anything else that you want to talk about in terms of this D&D Community Adventures League? Anything else you want to throw out to our listeners?
Not that I can think of. Check out all of the free material that Wizards of the Coast has put out for staying at home. I love my community. You're all wonderful people. I love you so much. I miss so many of you.
Yeah, it's rough. All the conventions that we've been missing now for the last couple months, and all the game days and stores, and and meeting online is great, and it's as good as we can get right now, but it's not always the same as being able to sit down after a game and have a drink or a meal with all your friends. So
that's the part that I miss, because my current gaming group, we still play on Monday nights, same as everything. And afterward, once the game is over and that cool down moment happens, it's not the same online as it is when we're sitting around the table.
It's too easy when you're at home or at your desk or wherever you record or talk to just slip into home mode, I think, rather than still being kind of present in the game. If that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense, because when you're you can still do this at the table, but when you're at home, it's easy to kind of get up and walk away from it and be completely separate from it. Whereas if you walk away from the table to go into the kitchen to get something to drink, you're still hearing what's going on in the room where you're playing. Right. So there's a bit of a bigger separation when you're at the computer screen.
Cool. And I would normally ask you about all the writing that you've been doing, but I have a feeling you can't talk about any of that.
That's correct.
But I bet there are great things on the horizon for LaTia Bryant, adventure creator.
So to be honest with you, I haven't actually written anything recently, but some things that I have written previously are on the way.
Sweet.
But that stuff I can't talk about. But
we are going to be keeping our eye out for it. How's that?
I like that.
All right. So thank you. And I want to thank our patrons as well who support our show. I'm going to name just a few here. Brandon Barnes, the Old School DM Randy Farmer, Troy Sandland, Will Doyle, Zach Goins, Chris Constantine, Cindy Moore, Eric Simon, and Mirko Froelich. Thank you all for those names. I know, isn't it great? They support the show monetarily, which is very nice of them, because that helps us pay our costs for hosting and editing and so on. Or if you're out there listening and you can, for just $1 a month, that really helps us. You become a patron at patreon.com/MMP. And that extra $1 a month gets you special access to content from Down with D&D. We do a segment called Sneak Attack where we look at different things in the game. Misdirected Mark Productions and Pandas Talking Games all send out special content. If you can't help us monetarily, a review would be great on whatever medium you listen, whether it's Apple Podcasts or iTunes or whatever they're calling it these days. Reviews goes a long way for us, or just talk about us on social media. We appreciate that. It spreads the gospel of Down with D&D. LaTia, where can people find you on social media?
I am across any social media that I am on. I am at the Lady Tiefling. So TheLadyTiefling. The Lady Tiefling.
I certainly follow you there. Any other places where people can find you or your work?
So I have a couple of adventures that I wrote for the lead up to the most recent D&D book, Explorer's Guide to Wildmount. I have a couple of adventures on D&D Beyond
Sweet.
that you can check out. Other than that, everything else I can't talk about.
Okay. You can find me on Twitter at Shawn Merwin, or you can go to our forums at forums.misdirectedmark.com, and there is a Down with D&D section where you can chat with us about anything D&D related that you want. Down with D&D is a Misdirected Mark production, the media arm of Encoded Designs. So, hey, LaTia, what are we going to do now?
I think we should go kill some monsters.
I agree.
Get down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
Get down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
Get down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
Who's down with D&D?
This whole party.
Down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
You down with D&D?
Yeah, you know me.
I'm down with D&D.
Yeah, you know me.
Who's down with D&D?